I'm here at Rockley Lane, just a little bit down from the Rockley Abbey campsite, and the little bit of history that I'm searching for today is Rockley Woodhouse, a rural retreat and hunting lodge built by the Wentworths of Stainborough in 1756. The Wentworths acquired Rockley in the 1730s, and given its location between Birdwell and Stainborough, it became a main route to Wentworth Castle from the Sheffield Turnpike. It was a very pleasant route by all accounts. The author Joseph Wilkinson described it as a noble drive through the woods and avenues of Rockley, and one that formed a lovely and interesting approach to the castle. So, I'm heading into Friar Tail Wood to see if I can find any traces of Rockley Woodhouse. I mentioned any trace because Rockley Woodhouse was demolished in the 1950s to make way for coal mining works. So I'm not expecting to find it, just get a sense of where it was located. You may well ask, Jim, why are you looking for a building that was knocked down 70 years ago? And I'd argue maybe that's a reasonably valid question. But the answer is quite simple. I have a fascination with the architectural legacy that the Wentworth family have left us. They were prolific builders. Their monuments, follies and houses are dotted around the Barnsley landscape. And I think it is those buildings that are no longer here that deserve the most documentation. Wow, what a view! I am stood on the western edge of Friar Tail Wood, and in front of me is Rockley Dam. The tree line in the dip is Rockley Dam. Back in the day, the fields in front of me would have been covered entirely with trees, except the small section there in front of the dam. That is where Rockley Woodhouse was located. I know this for three reasons. First of all, there is a photograph that shows the woodhouse, and I make that it is taken from the other side of the dam beyond the trees, facing in this direction. Secondly, the author, Joseph Wilkinson, again describes the woodhouse as being in an open space of land in front of Rockley Dam. And lastly, in the 1855 Ordnance Survey map, Rockley Woodhouse is quite clearly marked. I'm now comparing two maps, the one from 1855 and a contemporary one from the Ordnance Survey website. You'll see that, as I mentioned, Rockley Woodhouse is clearly marked on the 1855 map. You can also make out Rockley Dam, although it isn't labelled as such on the newer map. So, by my reckoning, the woodhouse would have stood about halfway between where I am now and the tree line that now covers the dam. So I'm going to take a walk to the corner of the field over there and take a look from the general direction of the photograph. field to my right is where the Woodhouse would have stood. If you look at the trees that cover the dam, they would have been much less dense, and the dam itself would have looked like a lake, a small lake. There was even an island, from what I can tell from the maps, there was even an island in the middle of the dam, and on the photo it looks like to be a fishing jetty. It surely was, or seemed, a great place for relaxation, almost like a holiday camp, although I'm not entirely sure the Wentworths would be quite thrilled about it being described in that way. So I'm coming up now to the edge of the dam. And I'm looking roughly in the general direction of my photograph. Admittedly, the photo itself would have been taken some position to my left on the other side of the dam. But if I stood there, I wouldn't be able to see anything through the trees. But I'm stood roughly looking in the direction of the photograph, where Rockley Woodhouse would have stood. Joseph Wilkinson describes the Woodhouse as a small but elegant building consisting of 2 wings communicating with which is a colonnade or portico, and from the centre rises a tower surmounted by a balcony. So this was no ordinary hunting lodge. It wasn't a shack in the fields, it was a place of luxury. And we are only about a mile from Wentworth Castle. It's roughly in that direction, maybe a 20-minute walk. And it's not difficult to imagine the lords and the ladies in their finery taking a stroll down the South Avenue at the castle, coming into the woods here at Rockley, and eventually to Rockley Woodhouse to enjoy a picnic or a banquet or a day's fishing or hunting or shooting. How the other half live, right? So not a bad morning's work for me, I don't think. I wouldn't try and pretend that Rockley Woodhouse is the most interesting or exciting story that Barnsley can tell. But it nevertheless still is a little bit of history, and it's a little bit of our history.